Welcome to the film analysis. Today with Vertigo by Alfred Hitchcock. Truly the best film of all time and, by a happy coincidence, also my favorite film. Vertigo was released in 1958 and stars Kim Novak and James Stewart. As the title suggests, it is a dizzying film in every sense of the word. The great music by Bernard Herrmann is not the least contributing factor. Hitchcock often worked with this composer, and Hitchcock advised him to create music like Wagner's Tristan and Isolde. In fact, this string-heavy music works with harps, tones, but also with the notable wind section. The music lives from dissonances and comes close to Tristan and Isolde. The love motive appearing again and again in Vertigo is very close to Wagner, but there's more to it. The camera in a dark dream with castanets, and there's also a nice punchline, a reference to music in the film, namely Scotty, the name of the main character, is to be treated with music, but with Mozart. And we know Mozart will not help him. And then the melodies of Bernard Herrmann start again. But what is the film about? Like almost every Hitchcock film, Vertigo may be received as a pure crime thriller. And we can't avoid spoilers here. We must fan out the whole film as it takes place. But we should also consider Hitchcock himself working with spoilers. What is Vertigo all about? We see it at the beginning. Scotty was a policeman. We see a flashback, a traumatic event during a chase on the rooftops of San Francisco. That's when Scotty breaks down. A colleague wants to help him and reaches out his hand. But Scotty can't even accept his hand. The colleague falls off the roof, traumatizing Scotty. He suffers from a terrible fear of heights. A while later, a friend hires him. They haven't seen each other in ages. The wife of his friend is behaving strangely. Her name is Madeleine. She drives around in her car the whole day just like that. She seems absent. And this friend, he suspects his wife to identify with a dead woman, Carlotta Valdez, from the 19th century. There's a connection to this tragic figure. So now Scotty is to shadow Madeleine and find out what's wrong with her. He sees her for the first time in a restaurant called At Ernie's. Everything's lined in red and this camera pulls in Kim Novak. We see her from behind, her back exposed. It's probably the most beautiful scene ever shot. And we see immediately it's love at first sight. Scotty is completely confused and we know now he is addicted to this woman and we viewers are addicted to her too. Scotty continues to pursue her. He's shadowing her day in and day out. They fall in love when he saves her life, but then a tragic accident occurs. She is suicidal. They are at an old monastery. She runs up a bell tower alone and throws herself down. He cannot stop her as he is afraid of heights. He can't get up the tower that fast. Then sobriety. We see a court case. A judge clarifies the circumstances and says, yes, this Scotty could have done something, but he is a bit weak and he's trying to deduce all this, how it must have been. It was suicide, finished out. Scotty's traumatized. He looks for Madeleine all over San Francisco, for this object of his desire, then for individual details. He finds Madeleine everywhere, but not the Madeleine he thinks he sees. It immediately turns out to be an older woman, a slightly fatter woman. It is not the Madeleine until he suddenly sees an ordinary girl, Judy. She wears a deeply debated, rather vulgar dress on the first date. It appears to Scotty, this Judy, she resembles Madeleine somehow. And he turns this Judy into Madeleine. We viewers then get a bit of a spoiler, namely we see Judy drafting a letter which she doesn't send to Scotty, in which she explains what really happened. She is just an actress in a big intrigue. The husband who hired Scotty to shadow Madeleine killed his wife and now must fake a suicide and needs a perfect alibi. Judy played Madeleine and she just doesn't want to become Madeleine again now. Judy says it was the perfect murder. There was only one flaw, and that was that we fell in love with each other, that I fell in love with you. But she doesn't send the letter. And so Judy slowly turns back into Madeleine. Scotty dresses Judy like Madeleine, has her hair done like Madeleine, and then, however, this murder mystery plot takes place. There's suddenly a hint that something is wrong with this Judy. She wears the necklace of Carlotta Valdez, and they repeat this scene at the bell tower. This time they go all the way up. A union seems to unfold, but Judy falls, probably falls, it's not so clear. A nun appears, she says, I heard footsteps. We see Scotty standing there at the end, completely disillusioned. Now, the second time he finally looks down, he's not afraid of heights anymore, but Madeleine, or rather Judy, is dead. There are 4 women in this film. One is the dead Carlotta Valdez, and then there's the imaginary Madeleine, and there's Judy. Finally, Mitch, Scotty's good friend. They were engaged once, but she broke off the engagement after a few weeks. She now considers herself a friend, but also a mother, as she explicitly states at one point. She also addresses him as "oh boy" or "oh big boy." Mitch represents a key figure to the film. People often fail to realize that she resembles Scotty somewhat, but also Judy. Mitch also shadows Scotty when she finds out he's dating a woman and she pines for him. She says this is the perfect man, and yet obviously in the realization of that perfection the whole thing has failed, which is why now they just stay at such a seeing distance from each other, because that's the only way that you don't have to let go of your longing and that you won't be disappointed either. At the same time, she wants to be Scotty's desirable subject, and she also wants to transform herself into this Carlotta Valdez. She paints a picture of Carlotta and morphs her face into this picture. Vertigo is a film about the surface, but tells the surface is not superficial at all. No, on the surface lies the deeper truth, the life behind it. That is everything flowing in our veins and so on, something hideous. Only art, only the artificial can save us. People often accuse Vertigo of a male perspective. No, it is a film about the man who is doomed to failure with his desire. And at the same time, you must ask yourself, who is potent here? It's not Scotty at all, it's Judy. If anyone, who seems to hold the strings very well in her hands in the end. Mitch behaves in a similar way to Scotty. We don't just have a male fantasy here, but it's generally about desire, about illusion in love and sexuality. For Vertigo to work as a thriller, you must be very careful about plausibility. We just learn about Scotty's fear of heights with this opening sequence. But do we really believe it? Hitchcock shows us once again how strong this fear of heights is when Scotty finds himself in Mitch's flat and he gets the idea of overcoming his fear of heights step by step. He takes a step ladder. On the 3rd step, he already gets dizzy. We find it believable that even at the decisive moment he does not manage to climb this bell tower. In principle, Hitchcock also acts like Scotty here. He pays a lot of attention to detail. They all must fit for the film to be right. Just as all the details in Madeleine must be right so that she too forms a coherent picture, also indicated by the opening credits. We see a dismembered woman, a woman who incidentally does not appear again later in the film. We see her lips, her eyes, her nose. We only see individual objects, but we don't see the whole. And at the same time, a spiral is drawn running across it, representing the film's shape. We get into a spiral like that and we can't get out. Scotty will also look for details, as we already see there in the credits. But it's not fetishism in the sense that if the details are there, it's enough for sexual desire. Yes, he sees Madeleine's car again, he sees a woman with that hairstyle there, a woman with Madeleine's dress, but it's not enough. He must also see Madeleine's face. Only then can this fantasy fully function again. The film doesn't concern fetishism as much as some may think. Let's move on to the technical aspects, also constituting a great film, daring to do something new. Hitchcock establishes the famous vertigo effect. How do I create a feeling of vertigo? How do I make it perhaps even tangible for the audience? And so, for example, at the tower scene, Scotty looks down, gets dizzy. Hitchcock has the camera move back and zoom in at the same time, creating an uncomfortable feeling. Light was also important to Hitchcock, a strange mood of light indicating Madeleine is not of this world. Hitchcock excels in the cemetery scene when Madeleine visits Carlotta's grave. Although there is wonderful sunlight, Hitchcock uses a fog filter, causing Madeleine to become completely enraptured. This enormous artificiality reappears in Judy's hotel room when she transforms into Madeleine. There, Hitchcock uses neon light. In general, neon light in film means artificial moments. It's not natural light. And we have a neon sign on the hotel casting, neon green into Judy's room. Judy then transforms herself completely out of sight of the viewer into Madeleine in her bathroom. And then she suddenly steps out of the door into the neon light. And she is Madeleine again. She is Scotty's realized fantasy, and at the same time this artificiality features ghostly elements. There's a phrase by French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan: "Don't give me what I desire." We are downright afraid that our fantasies, what we desire, will become reality. And we also read in Scotty's face, he fears himself for having made it, for having created this creature, Madeleine. It's a bit like the Pygmalion myth or even the Frankenstein motive. Hitchcock didn't think much of great actors insofar as he didn't want them to express insane emotions, to play very expressively. He rather wanted actors to look as expressionless as possible, and he did the emotion in the editing. You could say that as a director he brings that to life here too, but there are exceptions in this film, and certainly the most interesting exception is Kim Novak. When she, as first Judy, now Madeleine, steps out of the bathroom into this neon light, something transforms in her and something incredible happens there in her face. philosopher Robert B. Pippin wrote an entire book about Vertigo, the philosophical Hitchcock. He executes a wonderful analysis scene by scene. And he says the following about this performance by Kim Novak. Quote, "One of the many extraordinary elements of the scene is the expression on Kim Novak's face as she purposely and confidently walks forward with none of the hesitations, tentativeness, and somewhat whiny traits of Judy. Those are gone. She not only knows she is Madeleine, she clearly knows, we see she knows, that she now possesses infinitely more power in the relationship than she would ever have as Judy. The subtlety of Novak's performance reaches its apogee here. She manages to convey somehow that this Madeleine is one where Judy is still visible, playing the role, not wholly effaced. Madeleine's face has open, yearning, and very American expression that we recognize as Judy's, even as she also clearly realizes the fact that she is not an imitation of Scotty's Madeleine. She is all the Madeleine there ever was." End of quote. You can see all that in Kim Novak's face, that she's acting, that she wants to be it at the same time that she wants to be it for him, but she knows she has the power over him by becoming Madeleine. It is an outstanding performance. Hitchcock, as I said, works with a spoiler here. The letter from Judy is addressed to Scotty, but only we, the audience, learn the contents. So suddenly we are smarter than Scotty. The tension builds. That's Hitchcock's suspense principle. Hitchcock used to say when a bomb explodes somewhere, you are surprised. But suspense is created when the audience has seen the ticking bomb under the dining table and knows it will go off in 10 minutes. Something else happens because of the spoiler. We too have been lost for a long time. We want Judy to become Madeleine again. We have also fallen in love with this illusion. And now Hitchcock shows us, even though we have now just been enlightened about the plot, we still desire it. We are unenlightened at the same time, so to speak. We don't want any enlightenment at all. We want Judy to become Madeleine again. And Scotty suffers 3 losses in all this. There's the first loss, which is not so tragic, you might say. He sees Madeleine fall. It's the love of his life. Now she is dead. And yet something is still alive, namely the longing. One would have to find a woman like Madeleine. The second loss is a little more complicated. It consists of restoration of Madeleine so that the fantasy can become reality. But then the fantasy is no longer a fantasy and turns into reality. That too is a loss that one can also experience in a different way or in a similar way. Let's say much more in relationships that break up. One wishes for nothing more than for the relationship to be reinstated, for the partner to return. Often the great disillusionment follows. The longing about someone staying away is much greater than the reality when someone comes back. Thirdly, Scotty suffers the total loss. Judy and Madeleine die at the same time. Vertigo is a film about filmmaking, or rather a film about creating a remake. There are two directors within the plot. There is Madeleine's husband, who turns Judy into this graceful Madeleine, and then there's Scotty, who tries to do a remake. He's trying to recreate Madeleine again, so he's using Judy again for that. Will he succeed in recreating Madeleine? Hitchcock also reflects on his own work as a director, not only his private obsession with cool blondes, in which he shows us how to create a valid illusion. He shows us how film works and, with it, how our desire works. Of course, we are voyeurs, but that doesn't mean we want to see the naked. Hitchcock once said that anyone who shows naked skin has no talent. After all, this is a film about dressing. When is the right dress found for Judy that she becomes Madeleine again? There is no true self under these clothes to penetrate to. Now we see each other naked. Now we really meet. No, the mask is much truer than the face behind it. The accusation of male fantasy haunts Vertigo in its reception history. But as I said, what we see here is a very fragile masculinity. This is already established with Scotty not being able to pull off this chase over the rooftops of San Francisco. He then must rely on a corset. So he's wearing an effeminizing garment, you might say. And he is completely overwhelmed throughout the film. At the same time, we think again of the neon light, of the artificial scenes. Vertigo clearly propagates this artificiality. Art is above life. To save life, one would have to strike to make art out of life and at the same time lose life. Hitchcock represents a radical conception of art. At the same time, however, he deconstructs it regarding masculinity. We hear from Carlotta Waldes that she was no longer allowed to see her daughter. This turned the sad Carlotta into the crazy Carlotta, wandering through San Francisco looking everywhere for her child. Scotty also becomes Carlotta in a way. He wanders around San Francisco looking for Madeleine. In the end, Scotty loses not only Judy, but also his imagination, and thus art itself. We see Scotty stepping out of the tower opening and suddenly being able to see down without feeling dizzy. Vertigo thus has something of a psychotherapy. Here we find Freud's idea remembering, repeating, working through. Scotty exercises himself, but also Judy. That's why she's supposed to remember again. She should go back there. That's how it really was. He applies it to Madeleine too. She should also detach herself from the past. At the same time, we have a psychoanalytical component. Mitch speaks of herself as a mother and sees Scotty as a boy, emerging at the end as a kind of maternal ego, the mother superior, triggering the drama as a deus ex machina. Here we have a very clear reference to other Hitchcock films featuring Oedipal structures as well. One could mention Psycho and, of course, The Birds. But there's more to it than simply psychotherapy. We hear Scotty saying, "I love you so, Madeleine," to Judy on the bell tower. Vertigo dares a happy ending. If we both hold on to the illusions, if we both pretend to be Scotty and Madeleine, who we were before, then love might succeed. But would we really be able to turn our lives into art? Wouldn't we then be dead, or at least undead? Hitchcock draws heavily on the theme of romance, and he also uses some romantic topoi here. For example, those eternal evergreen forest, the Muir Woods on the outskirts of San Francisco. We see the lovers on a rocky coast. When they kiss, waves foam up, crashing towards us. The latter resembles the world of Tristan and Isolde. This love, too, is doomed to failure, but we should venture another reference to Wagner, the opera Lohengrin. There, the woman is allowed to marry Lohengrin on one condition: she must not ask him. Never shall you ask me where I come from. The illusion can no longer be maintained if we know too much about another person. Romance ceases to work. Hitchcock reverses the genders compared to Lohengrin. Scotty is not allowed to ask who Madeleine is, but he does. And at the same time, Judy provokes this question by wearing Carlotta's necklace and thus making him wonder. Something is not right here. There is something very ambivalent here. Why does she want to be discovered? Does she also want to be asked at the end, as one might also ask with Lohengrin? Does he want to be asked? Is it only in the illusion that one cannot live? Scotty is now who he was at the very beginning, a policeman investigating, collecting facts and trying to decipher the world. But in doing so, he is extremely reductionist. Hitchcock has already shown us how ridiculously little the accumulation of facts says about the truth. Vertigo features quite the sober, almost ironic court case with this impertinent judge stating, yes, Scotty was probably not able to help this woman. This judge has all the facts about the circumstances and the death and so forth, but he didn't understand anything, Hitchcock says. Only with justice, only with the facts, you can't fathom the truth. The truth is bigger, more inscrutable. Scotty is little better than the judge. Too late, he says to Madeleine as they embrace once more on the bell tower. But that means nothing other than I know too much. We witness the completely enlightened human being. We don't just see a great criminal act here, but something symptomatic of our modern society. Scotty emerges cured of his phantasms, cured of everything, including his fear of heights. Now a life without illusions awaits him, a life without art, a banal life. But what exactly makes Vertigo the best film of all time? These were just a few rudiments of interpretation. One could go on endlessly. Like no other film, Vertigo plays so well with immersion and distance at the same time. On the one hand, the images immerse us. We are lost when we catch sight of Madeleine for the first time in this restaurant at Ernie's. But we distance ourselves too, at the latest with Judy's unsent letter. Now we are in the know. We also watch Judy slowly becoming Madeleine. One more hair clip is missing, but then it's time. But we are still enraptured, and we also step back in, again distancing ourselves from our desire and say, well, I know what I just saw, and yet I am once more completely flabbergasted. I'm completely lost to her again. In Psycho, we are also pulled in, but we are still pulled through as spectators and surprised at the end. The film is about manipulation, which we only realize in the final moments. Psycho rather teaches thrill to filmmakers. Vertigo intends something different. The film wants the audience to be enlightened, but not completely. In Vertigo, we react against our better judgment. We are still emotionally moved, even though we see through the plot. Although we see Scotty basically acting like an evil director, or we act against our desire. We also want to be lost in Madeleine, and at the same time we want to drive this desire out of ourselves by saying, yes, we know how films work. Our relationship to Madeleine is thus our relationship to film in general. We know it is only a film, yet we believe in it. We cry, laugh, etc. If we keep telling ourselves it's just a film, we can't enjoy the film. Vertigo is the film par excellence about the nature of film. It confronts us with an irresolvable dilemma. If we only watch, we do not see. If we merely see, we don't watch.
It would be nice if you would like to support the film analysis financially. You can do so via my bank account or PayPal. Also, you can find me on Patreon. Thank you very much.